Hello, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to be looking at a feature that we've not done before on webinars, and that is invoice payments. And that's not just paying your invoices, that's paying them via PayPal or Stripe. So getting paid faster is the idea behind this. So we're going to do a session where we've got some live demo of the software, but we've also got some videos today because obviously we're in a payments environment. There are parts that we can't demonstrate in a live environment. So we have to produce some videos for you to watch today. And there will be a recording of this session very shortly after today's session. So if you do want to watch this back, we will try and make that available as soon as possible for you. First of all, though, just before we begin, we'll just do some housekeeping, just in case this is the first webinar that you've joined us on. So you will notice that you're placed on mute, and that is just so that you can't speak to the team directly. But if you do have any questions on today's session, then please do use the questions panel and get those submitted to us. So you can open up that panel by using the icon that looks like a speech bubble with the question mark in there, and that will send your questions across to us. I do have Michael in the background who is on hand for any questions that you may have today. And there is a handout, so we've got a copy of today's slides. So if you do want to take a copy of that, the icon that looks like a document with a folded corner is the one that you'll need to use to download a copy of today's handout. So this is what we're going to go through today. So if you joined this morning's session, it shouldn't be as long as this morning's session because it's not as large a feature, and we're just going through one version rather than 4 this morning on budgets. But we're going to be looking at what invoice payments actually are, and then I'll show you a video of how you can set up invoice payments, whether you're using PayPal or Stripe. And then we'll look at some of the standard invoice layouts, but in addition we'll show you how you can add on a pay now option to a custom layout. If you've already got a layout in mind, I can show you how to add the pay now option onto there as well. And then we're going to show you what happens when a customer pays the invoice. So this is where we're going to show another video, and this will show you what happens when your customer pays the invoice, what the customer will see, and what happens if you've got things like prompt payment discount on there as well. And then I'll show you what will happen when you need to sync your invoice payments as well, and how it downloads those transactions into your software. And if there's any questions that we can demonstrate at the end of today's session, then we will do so at the end. But please don't feel you need to wait till the end of today's session to submit your questions. Please do send them throughout the session so that we've got time to get through them all today there for you. Okay, so first of all, what are invoice payments? So as I mentioned earlier, it's not just simply paying invoices, it's where you can request your payment to be received from the customer via one of the payment portals, either Stripe or PayPal. Now, Michael did a session a few weeks ago where we discussed Opeo, which was formerly Sage Pay. So it's a similar principle to that, but the setup and the usage of it is just slightly different. So we've done a separate session for that. Now, the benefits of this, it means you can email your customer their invoice, and they can literally open that invoice in their email, and they can literally click Pay Now immediately. And it will take them to a payment portal where they can make that payment immediately. So the idea is that you will get paid quicker. What's also great about this is not only is it processing that payment quickly for you, it will automatically download and post transactions into your Sage 50 accounts on your behalf. So again, it's starting to take a bit of the legwork out of processing invoices. So it makes it much easier for your customer because they're not going to open the invoice and add it to a list of things to be paid. They've got the option there to click immediately. Now, when you activate invoice layouts, you will have the new Pay Now option on some of these layouts that are in the software. If you try and access those layouts at the moment, it will tell you need to activate invoice payments first. But now, once you've activated it, you will have these with the Pay Now option readily available. Now, this feature has been around for a while, but in version 29.0, we made some improvements to this feature. So not only can you take payment, but you can now, if you're using 29 or above, take partial payment. Okay, and you can also, as I mentioned earlier, apply prompt payment discount if you're using that and they're paying within the agreed timescale. So to use invoice payments, you do need to be on a subscription version of Sage 50 accounts, and you have to be on a plan with us. But there isn't any additional charge for this. So all of the charges will come from PayPal or Stripe. So we're not going to be talking about the charges today because they are not governed by us. So if you do have any questions about that, I do need to point you back to your provider just so they can discuss any charges on there. But there's nothing added from Sage's point of view. So we're going along today assuming that you already have a PayPal or Stripe account. If you don't, then obviously start to investigate those providers, maybe see which one's going to work best for you first. So first of all, I'm going to show you how you can start to set up invoice payments if you wish to go ahead with this. So the first thing you will need to do, and I'm going to just drop into a little demonstration in just a moment, is you do need to have what we call a Sage account. So that is where you've maybe used in the past remote data access, you'll be asked to log into a Sage account. Now, if you haven't created one, don't worry, then you can in fact create one during this process. So it will give you the option to create an account if you've never created that account before. But it's what we term a connected service. So it is in your software, but it links on to another service via the internet. So it's cloud connected. Once you've activated it by logging into Sage accounts, at that point, it gives you the option of whether you want to connect to Stripe or to PayPal. Now, I've got two different companies set up today, one with invoice payments set up and one with it not. So I'll just make sure I get the right one logged on straight away. So I can show you where you can find a little bit more information in your software first of all, and just show you as well what happens at the moment if we log on and try and use some of these features, even though we haven't activated it. So first of all, the first place you need to have a look on is in apps and add-ons. So within here, this is where it's got all of your apps and add-ons, or it should do. I'll just go back a step there. It's because I clicked on it earlier. If we go back to services, doesn't quite want to work there. I'll just try that again. So what normally happens when you click on apps and add-ons, it gives you all of the different apps and add-ons as it's just loading there for me. It's showing me all the apps and add-ons that are available. So you can see here whether or not you've used any of these features before. And this will indicate whether you've got a Sage account. But if you scroll a little bit further down, you can see Sage Invoice Payments is here. And this is where you can click on Learn More and it will take you to the screen that we've just seen there. And this is where you can see more information. There's an overview on there. There's frequently asked questions on here as well. And this is one of the ways we can actually set up. Once you have decided to commit to this, you can click on Get Started. Now I do have a quick video that's going to show you how to set this up. It's about 2 minutes long maximum, and this is going to go through that setup process as much as we can given that we're in a test environment. So I'm going to leave that to play and then we'll be back with you just to show you what happens before and after activating.
Activation of invoice payments can be made through apps and add-ons and by clicking on Get Started, or via settings and invoice payments on version 28.1 and below, or via connected services and invoice payments on version 29 and above. Once you have clicked on Let's Get Started, you then need to connect to your Sage account. If you've not yet set up a Sage account or used a connected service such as remote data access, then you will be given the option to create an account. Once connected to your Sage account, you can begin setting up invoice payments by linking with your payment provider. In this example, we're going to connect with Stripe. Click Learn More and then the option to connect. Enter the email address you've used for your Stripe account and select Continue. This may ask you for further verification information to prove your identity prior to connecting. Once connected to your payments provider, you'll need to complete the invoice payments configuration. Here you can choose or create a bank account to represent the Stripe or PayPal account. You can select a nominal code to be used for Stripe or PayPal fees, and the tax code you wish to be used for any associated fees. You're now ready to start using invoice payments, and you'll be able to access the invoice payments layouts.
Okay, so that was just a brief overview of the setup process. And I just wanted to highlight just a couple of things that might cause a couple of questions. So first of all, finding the option for invoice payments. Now this depends on your version. Now if you have the option for connected services at the top of your company, in connected services, you'd find the option for invoice finance. If you don't have connected services, you might have settings, this one here. And what you might find is that your invoice payments option is within here. So just bear in mind that you might have different options depending on your version number. Now, a really good question came through there around templates. So I'm just going to show you this very quickly on my non-activated company first of all. So I'm just going to go into Invoices, and I'm just going to highlight any invoice at the moment and go to email. Oh, sorry, I'm going to go to print. Apologies, I'm jumping ahead there. And I just want to show you the layouts that are available. So if we pop into layouts, we've got a lot of them there, but if we scroll down towards the bottom, then we do have two here in particular that say with Sage Invoice Payments or Opeo by Elevon. So it's the same layouts as if you were using Opeo. Now, if I click on them now, I haven't yet activated this, so then I get this option here. Okay, so if you're seeing this, it means that yours hasn't been activated yet. Once we've activated, we'll see that that does work very differently. So I'm just going to close out of here. I'm just going to pop back to the slides. I'm going to start talking about how invoice payments can work for you. Now, as we mentioned earlier, it was just in the video there, before you set up invoice payments, you also need to tell it the nominal codes that you wish to use for your Stripe account, for any fees that result, and also the fees tax code. And this means that it can automatically post those transactions on your behalf. So you will need to do this before you're able to connect up to your provider. So next we're going to look at actually using invoice payments. So as I mentioned there, you've got these layouts that come as default. Now they will become active once you've activated invoice payments in your software. So they will generate just like a normal invoice would once you've activated. However, you may be in a situation where you've got your own custom layouts. So you might have layouts that you've used for years. They've got things like your logo on, they've got your bank details. They're really personal to you, and changing over to one of our standard layouts is maybe not going to work for you. So you can use these default layouts if you wish to do so. However, we also have the option for you to add the Pay Now option onto your custom layout. I'm going to very briefly show you this. I'm not going to go into too much detail on it because we really want to get to the bottom of how this works for you. But I do just want to give a very quick demo. So again, I'm just going to jump back into my software, and I'm just going to find a layout in here that isn't an invoice payments layout. So pop into a layout. I'm just going to pick the top one in the list. We need to go into Edit. And this is where we can make edits to these layouts and add things like our logos and bank details and make it far more customized to our business and our needs. If I just bring that across, what you'll find within the toolbox is the option to add a Pay Now button. And this adds not just the Pay Now button, which will link up to your provider, but also a little bit of text that gives a little bit of explanation to your customer about what will happen when they click on Pay Now. Now, I have also provided a link to the article on the handout today that gives more information on adding that onto your custom layouts as well. So if you are in that situation, please do check out the link that's on the handout there, and it'll give you more information on how to do that. Okay, so what we're going to do next is I'm going to show you the next video, which is how invoice payments works. Okay, so it's going to show you what happens when you email that invoice to your customer, what the customer will see at their end, and also the transactions that download. We'll then come back to talk about syncing those invoice payments, which our video is going to touch on at the end there.
Invoice payments is a great feature for providing online payment links on invoices for your customers when using Stripe or PayPal. This makes the process quick and easy for your customers to pay on time. And when invoice payments is activated, you can email the invoice to your customers with an integrated Pay Now button. Invoices can be emailed directly from the Invoices window if you've set up the default layout to one including the integrated link. Or you can generate the preview and select the Email Invoice with Invoice Payments option. From here you can preview or send to your customer via email. When your customer receives the email invoice, they can use the Pay Now option at the bottom of the invoice to make an instant payment direct to your Stripe or PayPal account. These transactions can then be downloaded directly from your provider into your data and allocated to the invoice they relate to. In version 29, there have been improvements to invoice payments to allow partial payments of invoices and to account for any settlement discount applied. Now when a customer selects the Pay Now button, they have the option to pay the invoice in full or to make a partial payment. Once the part payment is made, the confirmation demonstrates the invoice value and the amount still due. If the customer was to click on the Pay Now option again, then only the remaining value would be displayed under the full amount. However, there is still the option to make a further part payment. Now let's take a look at what this looks like in Sage 50 accounts after syncing with invoice payments. As you can see, the sales receipt has been created for the part payment and a bank payment for the related fees involved. In addition, invoice payments can now account for settlement discount if you've entered this into the customer records within the Credit Control tab. When the Pay Now option is selected within the settlement discount period, the discount is automatically applied to the transaction. As you can see, after the transaction is downloaded from invoice payments, the sales receipt is posted, and we have two sales credit notes, one for each item line of the invoice. And again, we have the bank payment for the related fees. Finally, settlement discount is only applied when the invoice is paid in full. If you opt to part pay, no settlement discount is deducted. When you go back in to pay off the remainder of the invoice, again you can see the settlement discount is no longer showing. Sage 50 accounts synchronizes with the invoice payment service 3 times a day, and any transactions will automatically post into your accounts. You can, however, also manually sync your data. You can do this in either Settings and Invoice Payments, or Connected Services and Invoice Payments, depending on your version. Within here, you can view any failed transactions and also manually sync the data. When invoice payments transactions are downloaded, it will automatically allocate the payment to the invoice, therefore processing a sales receipt transaction. A failed transaction is where the transaction has not been matched to the original invoice. The details will explain why a transaction has failed, in this case due to the original invoice not being updated to the ledgers. This transaction will be downloaded as a payment on account and then can be manually allocated.
Okay, so that was an overview of how the invoice payments feature can work. Now I've moved over to my data set now that has got invoice payments activated, just so I can highlight a couple of things there. So the first one is in invoices and credits. If I now go into print and select one of those layouts which have invoice payments on, auto pay, if I double click them, I no longer get that message that we had earlier. So now it just launches it just like any other layout would, and it allows me to send that to my customer. And as you can see, if I scroll right to the bottom, that's where we've got the Pay Now option there with the explanation at the bottom there. And they can be further customized. So if you did want to add your logo onto these, then you can do that through Edit. And we've got sessions that cover how to do some basic amendments on there. Now in that video, we mentioned about creating this as your default email. So at the moment, if I was to highlight the invoice and click email, I get this message here. So just want to very quickly show you how you could set up one of those as a default so that you can literally highlight the invoice and click email and that go out to your customer, because the fewer clicks means that you're doing things much quicker in the software. So I'm going to say no because I want to show you how you can get here manually, but you could say yes. But you can go into settings and then invoice and order defaults. And within here, in the email tab, this is where we can tell it the default email layout to use. So I could browse and find my invoice payments layout further down. And then that would just email immediately. So I just need to tell it what layout to use when I click email and it will do it. Okay, now this is on a test system, so it won't have email set up, so I won't even attempt to try and show that one because it will throw up an error, which will throw us off today's session. So next, I just wanted to show you there the transactions again. So just wanted to reiterate what this will do is it will download the receipt for you. And where possible, as you can see on this particular one here, it will allocate the receipt to the original invoice. So we'll look and find that original invoice and update it and allocate them together. Now, as we saw in the demonstration there, it couldn't allocate one of mine, and that was because I hadn't yet updated that invoice to the ledgers. But it still downloads the transaction as a payment on account, and it just gives us what we need to do. It gives us a little bit of detail in order to fix the issue there. So again, it should sync 3 times a day for you. But if you do feel that you need to log in and do a manual sync, then you can do that in your software. Now this is in the same place you would go to activate it. So either in settings and invoice payments or connected services and invoice payments, depending on your version. So on this one, it's in settings and invoice payments. And then I get this window here that you should recognize from the video. Now, because again, I'm on a test setting, it's a little bit, have a little bit of an issue with this button loading up here. It sort of vanishes. So if I did want to manage my account, this will link me in to my Stripe and PayPal link. And you can see what I've got connected. And if I just pop back here, I can sync, so I can force it to sync if I wanted to do so. Now, a sync will automatically launch any failed transactions if there are any. But if I want to view them without doing the sync, because again, the sync might take a while depending on how much is downloading, then I can click Viewed Transactions from here. And what this will do is it will just allow me to expand on here, and you can see exactly why those transactions have failed. Once I've done these, I can highlight them and mark them as read. Now, what can also happen is when you close out of the software, the next time you log in, it can also prompt you to let you know that there's been failed transactions. So if you've logged off for the day and you log on the next morning again and there's been a failure, it can prompt you to say, there's failed transactions, do you wish to view them now? So that you're starting off the day already assessing those and looking at those issues. Now, if you should decide that you want to disconnect, again, you've got the option to disconnect. So people always like to know that there's a way out. If I connect and it doesn't quite work for me, can I come back out? Then yes, you can disconnect using the disconnect feature there as well. Okay, so I'm going to just pop back onto the slides there. So if there are any questions, please do get them across. There's been a couple there, so that's great. So just want to go through some of the additional things, such as reporting. So I'm just going to get this back onto a slideshow. Okay, so it's always useful to know how can I report on this afterwards, or how can I extract that information once I've set this up and everything's working. Is there a way I can differentiate these transactions from my everyday transactions? So there are reports available, and again, these are only available once you've activated invoice payments, and you can find these in the transactions screen and in reports and under audit trail. And there's two reports, but really it is one report. One's just in a landscape format. So that is the report that you can use, but that will bring through all transactions that have come through via Sage Invoice Payments for you. There are also other ways you can analyze your data. You can also put filters onto your transactions module. So things like the username, you can pop a filter on for the username. So anything that's posted from invoice payments will in fact have invoice payments under the username. So you'll be able to find those very easily. And also, normally in the reference will be Stripe or PayPal or your provider. So you'll be able to also put a filter on there to show all of those with a reference of Stripe, for example. So just looking, there's a couple of questions coming through there. Just going to have a quick look and see if we can answer yours there, Karen. So does the invoice number show in the transactions list? So we'll just pop back onto the demo data there for you. Just see if we can answer that one. Just bear with me while I change screens over. Okay. Okay, so just have a look at the details here for you. So normally, if you do invoicing from just the invoices and credits module, it will populate your reference with the invoice number. It does still do that, but what you will see is it also has the word Stripe in there as well. So it does make it quite clear that the Stripe, it's come through from Stripe. Okay, so you can still see that's invoice number 1, but it was a Stripe one, so it's got Stripe at the beginning as well. What you'd also see there as well as your Stripe fees come through with the fees in them, so they're easy to identify from the other transactions there. Just thought that would be a good one to try and demonstrate while we've got the data there. Okay, so I'm going to pop back onto the slides, and we're just going to start to do a little bit of a summary there of today's session. So invoice payments is very similar to what Michael went through a few weeks ago with Opeo. It's designed to connect your invoicing to either Stripe or PayPal to help you get paid quicker and easier. Transactions can be then downloaded from Stripe or PayPal, and it means that there's less processing for you, because not only does it download the transactions, is where possible, it will allocate them to the original invoice for you. If there is a failure, it will inform you of that failure and also give you steps that you can carry out to resolve that failure as well. But it will, where possible, still download them, but as a payment on account. And the Pay Now option can come on some of the standard layouts that are already in your software. So they'll be there today, even if you haven't activated it. It will just activate those for you. But if not, you can add that onto your custom layouts as well. So that brings us to the end of today's demonstration for invoice payments. Now, I'll just give you an opportunity to pop any final questions that you've got there across to us. But in the meantime, I do want to talk about International Accounting Day and the upcoming webinars. So if you bear with me one moment, we'll just get the article up for you and bring that one across. So I've got our help centre here, and this is where you can find any information on anything in the software. So you can type in invoice payments, and there's quite a few articles on there on different aspects of setting up, of using the system, adding the details onto your invoices. There's lots of different information on there. But what you can also do is you can also add, so you can also search for things like our webinars. So I'm just making sure the screen showed there. So I'm going to type in the word webinars here. And this will take you to not only our webinars page, but our recordings page as well. So if you have missed a session, you want to have a look back at a previous session, then you can have a look at our webinar recording page. But I'm going to just show you the upcoming webinars. So next week it is half term in the Northeast. It means there's not much going on next week from our team. We've got 3 webinars as opposed to about 7 or 8 that we normally run. So we've got bank feeds on Monday, and then Tuesday we're looking at both clearing records, in particular product records, and also the returns feature as well. But beyond that, we're gearing up for a big week for International Accounting Day. So International Accounting Day is actually on Friday the 10th, but we've decided to do a whole week of celebrations to celebrate the day. Now, what we're also doing with this is we're introducing our first ever digital badge for Sage 50 Accounts webinars. So that's something that you're interested in, getting a badge and being able to show people. You can add it onto your signature, you can upload it onto social media platforms. Then what you need to do is join 4 of the 7 webinars that week, and they do have to be live attendances. Unfortunately, you won't get it for watching the recording afterwards, but if you can attend 4 of the 7 webinars, then we can issue with our first ever badge for accounts automation. So we're trying to keep accounts automation in mind. It links in very nicely with today's session, which we're trying to automate processing in the software. So we are doing a separate bank feed session, slightly different to our normal, but it is still similar to the normal bank feed session. So if you are going to look for bank feeds, maybe the week after is the one to join. Things like streamlining your data, so doing filters and searches on your data, using memorize and recall. And we're also going to be doing recurring items, batch reporting, which is a really, really useful feature, and emailing invoices. On the day itself, we'll actually do a Sage 50 Accounts quiz. Okay, so that will be our first attempt at a quiz for this financial year, and that always proves very popular. So do recommend joining us for the quiz on the Friday morning if you do have some spare time. Not only will it be a bit of fun, but hopefully you will also learn something from that session too. Okay, so just waiting for the questions to come in there. So a quick one there is, do you need your customer's bank account in Sage for this to work? So you don't necessarily need your customer's account details in, because when they click on the Pay Now option, it takes them to a payment platform, and that's where they put their card details in. So it's not through a bank transfer, it's more of a payment by credit card. So they would just need to have their card to hand. So you don't need your customer's bank account details in for that. So great to see some questions there. I'm going to give it a few more moments because there could be a few final questions coming across there. If you are done with us and you're finished for today, then you are more than welcome to leave. Thank you very much for joining us, and we really do hope to see you next week, or at least for International Accounting Day, to come and celebrate with us. In the meantime, I'm going to pop myself on mute, and we'll pop back just before we end the session today. Okay, we're almost done, but I am just going to pop on with a final question there. And it just says, would we use the same bank account for setup or create a new Sage account for this purpose? So we do recommend to create a separate bank account for Stripe, almost like a dummy account, just so that you can see those transactions going through. So when you do set up, you need to specify the bank account, and we do normally recommend just create a new one for Stripe just to keep it separate from your main account. It does make things like bank reconciliation easier for you if you don't have lots of dummy transactions going through them. So my recommendation would be to set up your own one just for your own sort of to help yourself when you come to bank reconciliation. Okay, so on that note, I think we'll end the session there. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. Take care. And like I say, I really do hope that we will see you in the next few weeks. Take care for now.